sit down. Let's go sit down, people.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Carrie Werligan. I'm the Director of Career Services for the School of Business, and we are thrilled to have you here. I see some familiar faces, so I know you've been here to other Ask the Professionals. This is the fifth in our Ask the Professional Fall Series. We're very grateful to Eagle Bank. They have sponsored it, and they allowed us to buy all that great food, so please be sure to take advantage of it. We have a wonderful panel. Actually, our Eagle Bank representative is stuck in traffic, so he will be here shortly, and we'll just have him slip in when he gets here. Dr. Piloff is our moderator. He is from our finance area, and he's going to moderate the panel. But these wonderful professionals are here to speak to you. So make sure to ask them some really good questions. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Piloff and let him run the panel, and we'll at the end, we'll have some time to network. Okay?
Thanks, Carrie. Morning, everybody. I thought a good way to start out would just be to have each of the panelists introduce themselves and say a little bit about, what they do. And so why don't we start right here? We'll start with Judy.
Good morning. I'm Judy Redpath. I'm the founder and owner of Vista Wealth Strategies, LLC in Reston, Virginia. Our firm is a holistic financial planning wealth management business, focusing on working with business owners, entrepreneurs, and individuals who want a long, comfortable, sustainable lifestyle. And so the question that some of you may be asking is, why financial planning? We'll talk about that in a minute. I'm an MBA alumna of George Mason University, and I did not take a straight line to get to where I sit today. This business has been alive and very viable for over 20 years, but I started out as working for the federal government and then as a consultant in healthcare and in technology while I was getting my MBA here at Knight. I went back into business consulting and high-tech consulting and sales for a while, and then life leads us down many paths. It was my mother's unexpected and sudden passing and working with my dad on estate planning and estate settlement issues that led me to where I sit today. So whatever you're doing in life and whatever you think you might be doing in life, with your eyes open and your ears open, opportunities will present themselves often when they are least expected. So you're likely to have 4 to 7 different job changes or careers. As you sit here, that may be impossible to contemplate, but patience and taking advantage of opportunities as they arise is probably the best advice that I can give to each and any one of you. So we're in the business of helping our clients plan for a long, comfortable life. Cash flow, personal cash flow, just like a business cash flow, money coming in, money coming out. Planning for goals, planning for the future, planning for that word that we call retirement that we don't use where I work. We call it a lot of other things, rewirement, repositioning. But everybody has a long lifespan, hopefully, and thinking about what's important. So whether it's investments, and I have someone else here on the panel who's going to talk about that as well, tax planning, benefits, employee benefits planning, retirement planning, or estate planning, It covers a lot of territory, everything that you can imagine in your life, and some things you haven't imagined yet. The financial planning world is very flexible. One of the things that's amazing to me is only 20% of us are women. So for those of you who are women in the audience, I'll stay here for networking. If you have any interest, any of you, happy to answer any questions that you have. And it's an opportunity to grow and change as the world grows and changes. So an opportunity to use as many of your aptitudes and talents, whether it's working with people, working with the numbers that you have as finance majors, thinking about how to work with statistics, things I never imagined when I was going to school here at George Mason. These are tools that I use every day and think about. So whether it's management, finance, accounting, marketing, all of these aspects of business are brought to bear in the business. Thank you.
My name is Brandon Ham. I graduated here in spring of 2016 with undergrad in finance and management. I was recruited by KPMG during the business fair in my actual spring semester, which was a little late to be recruiting, but I got very lucky. There I work in a risk analytics, and a subdepartment of that would be securitization. So my work mostly involves valuing various structured products, pretty much exposure to every asset class, and also doing modeling for mostly agency issuance by Freddie and Fannie, but also various modeling work for pretty much every major Wall Street bank. I get a lot of diverse exposure, so it's really hard to narrow it down to one thing. Being in consulting, I'm moving from project to project as the work comes in, and it greatly varies, and the workflow greatly varies. That's it.
Good morning. My name is J.P. Fopp. I'm an I'm a managing director of investments with Wells Fargo Advisors in Tyson's Corner. If you asked me this question 25 years ago, I would have said that I was a stockbroker. But as Judy was commenting, the landscape today requires you to be much more broad and to expose yourself and provide the range of wealth management services. And like Judy, I didn't start along this path. I was in the political business for about 8 years. I used to run campaigns, and then for 4 years we developed some microcomputer software back in the day before there was even hard disks to manage campaigns. Did that for about 4 years, and then we wound up selling it, and didn't know what to do with myself. So I left my political roots and wound up being in business, but I didn't know anything about business. So I came to George Mason University and got an MBA in my 30s. So the relevance of that is that although I'm an employee of Wells Fargo Advisors, the branch manager works for me. Their job is to keep me and my colleagues happy so we can take care of our clients and deliver the resources that we have in the best way. We're very entrepreneurial. That's a great advantage if you are that kind of a person, but you have to get up and do everything on your own. Nobody's going to, necessarily tell you what to do. It's very much like owning your own business with the rewards and pitfalls that has with it. It's a changing industry landscape. The movement towards comprehensive wealth management, the reliance on management fees as opposed to commissions is it's at front and center. And I expect that we'll give you more insights as your questions go along. So it's a kind of unlike perhaps some of us on the panel, we have a business model that's really very entrepreneurial.
Morning. My name is Chima Fakak. I'm a graduate of December 2013 with a double major in finance and management as well. I started with Accenture right after college. I started as a financial analyst with the Department of Navy. About 6 weeks into the position, I had the opportunity to get on the Healthcare.gov project, or otherwise known as the Obamacare project, as a functional analyst doing requirements for a website, so it's nothing finance related. So, I thought, what the heck? It was a learning experience. It was great. But then I did that for a year and a half and thought, my background is really more finance. I like working with numbers, and essentially found my way into our corporate functions internal within Accenture Federal, and now I do pricing for proposals. So, when RFP or request for proposal or, drops from the government, then that would be the team that I work on to come up with, analyze the costs and revenue and operating income and how much it would cost for the clients. And so that's essentially what I do now. And through my time at Accenture, I also decided to go back to school and do my MBA in the evening as well. And here I am today. And, on top of that, I also sit on the School of Business board of alumni board of directors as a secretary. So still involved in School of Business today.
Thanks. I just have a question for the. We have our. Oh, perfect timing. You got here just in time to let everybody know who you are, what you do.
Sure. Charles Livingston. I'm evidently a professional at getting lost and not following directions, but I'm the CFO of Eagle Bank. Started my career with the Federal Reserve Bank back in the early 2000s. Was an examiner for about 7 years, a bank examiner. Then moved to PwC, where I did some advisory consulting work for about 3.5 years, mostly with a regulatory bend to it. Moved here from the San Francisco area to DC to join Eagle Bank about 6 years ago, and I've been now sitting in the CFO seat for just 6 months now.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure.
I just have a question for the audience. How many folks here are either thinking about or have already signed up for accounting or finance major? How many folks are management or marketing? ISOM? Undecided? So it's kind of a mixed crew. So I'll try to mix up the questions to appeal to everybody. So my question, and we'll start with Chima and work our way back down this way, is what do you find most rewarding about your job, and also what do you like least about your job? And to help the folks in the back of the room, panelists, can you guys use your microphones?
Okay, so what do I love about my job is the independence that I get to work on the proposals on my own. And it's like once I'm given a proposal or I'm assigned a proposal, it's like my baby to work on with very minimal guidance and, supervisor, telling me what to do and all of that. It's very rewarding when you work endless hours putting together costs and working with the sales team to come up with the most, challenging proposals, and also, you'd like to get to the price to win the proposal as well, and ultimately ending up getting the award and, the client choosing your proposal, and then it's very satisfactory knowing that your hard work was actually, very rewarding, and, you end up being satisfied with the hours that you end up putting in. What I don't like about my job is, I actually like my job, as interesting as that sounds. What I don't like about my job, I can say this. Sometimes it is peaks and valleys, really depending on, what time of the year it is. Right now, the government fiscal year ended in September, so October, November is kind of slow for us, which then again, it has its positives. I have the time to come out here and do events like this, and so it's not too bad, but that's about it.
What I like most about my job, other than the income, is the freedom and flexibility. And I recognize that I have an established practice. I have an established business. So if I didn't show up for 3 months, they wouldn't care. If I worked from home in pajamas, they wouldn't care. As long as I don't violate compliance rules and regulations, they don't care what I do. As long as we do the right, thing as defined. You can't do that when you start, but you can definitely do that over time. Unlike many of my friends that have, traditional corporate jobs, they can't do that when I can. So I appreciate that, particularly as the years go on. That becomes very valuable. What I don't like about this position is after 26 years, candidly, I find it to be very routine and kind of boring, much as a long-established doctor or an accountant or an attorney. After a while, your practice, you've done so many things so often, the intellectual challenge, although the issues are diverse, can become kind of stale. And that's just the way it is. I liked the political world because it was project after project. As a consequence of, I'm not saying this industry is intellectually challenging. Quite to the contrary, it's very challenging. But I occupy my time doing things at George Mason University on the Board of Trustees and the Foundation. I chair the investment committee. I'm always involved in little projects like that. And that kind of keeps it fresh.
So what I like about my job is, when I first was recruiting here at the job fair and I went up to KPMG and Deloitte, I didn't have any idea what actually a Big Four firm does. And I found out KPMG and Tysons has a very strong finance department. And for people who are really into finance and really want to learn more about the complex stuff they do, if you like challenges, that department's great. When I was in college, I was very interested in the 2008 financial crisis. I was very intrigued by those products that they were using. And the kind of exposure that I get to those products and learning all about them and valuing them is really fun for me. Other people might find that really boring, very difficult. So I really like that aspect. And kind of adding on to what others have said, in consulting, it is a client-based, so it has its ups and downs, but you have a lot of autonomy. And I kind of come in whenever I want. I leave whenever I want. But I always have to be on call for the client. So I might have a day where I work literally 3 hours. I go to like 2 lunches and go home. Other days I might, the work comes in at 5 p.m. and I work till 2 a.m. So if you're comfortable with that, that can be a good aspect. That can also be a bad aspect. People have obligations. I'm young and I have no obligations, so I kind of do it whenever. So I like that. One thing I don't like is some of the work, since it's client-based, we are a third party. They have to use us to review some of their work. It can be repetitive. Every month I do basically glorified auditing of agency issuance. So it's the same thing every month. And there can be some challenging aspects of that when the model doesn't tie out and you have to troubleshoot, which I find really fun. But if it goes smoothly, I find it actually really boring because you know exactly what it's going to be like, and it's 2 weeks long, so you know what you're looking forward to, and it's the same thing every time. I think that'd be it for what I don't like. Mostly, I really do enjoy my job, and I think there's so much you can learn, and it's a great starting point for your career. So whether you're accounting, management, or finance, Big Four consulting is, I think, definitely a great place to start if you're not sure exactly what you want to do.
Thanks for the question. So what do I like about my job? Almost everything. So I'm going to echo some of the other folks here at the table. We oversee family finances for our clients, about 100 families and clients, maybe a little bit more, and some business owners. I love the opportunity to be creative. Every day is a little bit different. We're focusing on issues that are really significant and important to our clients, and we can help make a difference in their lives and the decisions that they make about their lives, whether it's career opportunities, compensation, college funding, estate planning, taking care of a family member, accumulating money, spending money, teaching their kids how to spend, save, and share, thinking about buying a business, selling a business, working on sort of tax implications of things, but every single day is different. So the opportunity to be creative, the opportunity to apply a lot of the skills learned in business makes a difference. And to JP's point, for those of us who are lucky enough to have been in the business a long time, you're not constantly racing to meet a clock, or you have to meet a deadline, or you have to be somewhere. As an entrepreneur and a business owner, which I am both, have the opportunity to choose who our clients are, who we work with, what projects we take, as long as what we're doing is in the best interest of our clients and compliant with all the regulations. Which brings me to the only thing that I don't love about the business, which is the highly and increasingly regulated nature of the business. So if you don't like rules, not a good business, because some people make the rules for us, whether it's the SEC or a group called FINRA or the State Corporation Commission or some of the organizations that regulate us as professionals, like the Certified Financial Planner Board or FI 360 for the Accredited Investment Fiduciary, of which I am one. So if you choose to have designations or pursue additional education, which most of us have to do, you're just going to be making sure that you're always checking the box to make sure you're doing the right thing and that you can justify it and have a defensible position. But it's a wonderful, creative, flexible career.
I think the thing that I love most about my job is the dynamism. There's, and this again echoes some of the comments previously, but there's never a boring day. Whether it's prospecting, a merger and acquisition, prospect, or interpreting a new accounting pronouncement and working with my team to determine how we're going to implement that new pronouncement. Or coming to events like this, preparing for earnings calls, generating earnings releases. Later today, I'm actually going to be down on Capitol Hill talking to some legislators about bank regulation. So never a dull moment. The difficult thing for me really is just striking that work-life balance. Young family. And this is just a phase of life, fact of life, that it's just hard to please everyone all the time. So finding that balance is always somewhat difficult. But being at in the community banking sector sometimes offers the flexibility to be home at dinner time. So.
Thanks. Let me ask one more question, and then we'll turn it over to you guys. What skills would you, to the panel, recommend that a student develop while in school that would be best suited for the field that you're in? And particularly, if you could mention both kind of hard skills like finance-related, accounting-related skills, and then also some of the softer skills that might be more general as well. And so why don't we start with Brandon and then go that way, kind of mix things up a little bit. Brandon, then JP, then Chima, then come back here to Charles and Judy.
So for more of like a technical skill, I would say Excel. Being here, if you have a lot of experience working with Excel in an actual workforce, you really have no idea how much it can do. And that was one thing when I started, and it's kind of a tradition whenever a new employee starts here, they get made fun of for how poorly they move around Excel. So that's something I would recommend working on. There's classes here that can help you with that for sure. But really just on your side time looking for shortcuts, YouTube videos. When I first started, that's actually how I taught myself, because my boss would tell me to do something and I had no idea what it even meant. So I would go on YouTube and act like I knew exactly what he was talking about. More of a soft skill, I would say confidence and communications, interpersonal relations. When you get into the workforce, just interviewing, being able to present yourself, being confident, knowing your story, being able to articulate, all that is very important just in interviewing, and also just moving up through the positions at whatever firm you're at. That's what I would recommend.
Sorry to interrupt. You probably didn't even realize one of the really valuable soft skills that you mentioned was when your supervisor asked you to do something and you didn't know how, you took the initiative to make sure you knew how to do it. So that's a really good skill, and that's something you guys can bring to the table starting here.
And I would add to that saying, I usually have a thing if to get work in consulting, when they want to put you on a project and they ask you, do you know how to do this? we have a saying that you always lie and say, yes, I know how to do it. And then you go figure out how to do it. Otherwise, you're not going to get the work, and you're going to be sitting around looking like you're not a good employee. So we always lie and say we can do it, and then you just figure it out.
That might be the wisest thing that any of us is going to say today. For hard skills, statistics, you're going to see statistics all the time. You won't have to compute the statistics, but you have to be able to be comfortable with them. Likewise, macroeconomics. I mean, I read economics every single day. Thank God I like it. But I couldn't do a math problem in economics to save my soul. But it doesn't matter because it's conceptual. It's very relevant. On the soft skills for my profession, you have to be able to ask people for money. If you can't get anybody to give you any money, you don't have a job. So you need to learn how to sell, and that's not marketing. That's sales skills. Most everything you're going to do is going to have some sales skill in it. But if you can ask for the money, and if you can get people to give you money or their organizations to give you money, these institutions that you would work for will help you deploy it properly. But you have to go out and get the money.
I'm definitely going to add on to the Excel skills. In my line of work, it's all Excel. All of our models are Excel. And so being able to figure out what errors you have in your model, you need to be, somewhat, understanding, just the basic formulas. I mean, just, sum ifs, what ifs, how to put together pivot tables and stuff like that. All of that I definitely use every day in my life, or in my time at Accenture doing pricing. And as far as soft skills go, definitely figure it out. I mean, I was put in that position not just with Microsoft Excel, but also Microsoft Visio. And I had to put together a diagram, and I was like, what the heck is Visio? And I Googled it and YouTubed it and figured it out. And also don't be afraid to ask. Sometimes, you don't always have to know everything, especially coming out as entry level. There are some things that you're not going to know, and yes, you are going to figure it out, but sometimes it really just takes a simple question as, that will be 5 minutes for you to get an answer, as opposed to spending like an hour or two trying to figure it out. And so I think, being confident and, not being afraid to ask, will get you what you want, and I think will help you get a long way.
A third voice for Excel. It's probably one of the first questions I ask is, for prospective employees, do you know what a VLOOKUP is and how to do it? And I tell everybody in my department, if you don't know how to do it, go look it up on YouTube and figure it out. I think, also the skill of being able to take a fair amount of documentation and distill it down into an executive summary is also hugely important. I find reading long documents an incredible chore, and when I have folks who work with me who can say, look, this is what you need to care about, I find that pretty valuable. So I would recommend that you punch up those skills. Exercise your network and build relationships, because it matters. I mean, I know in an age today where we can essentially have food show up at our house without talking to anybody. We can, have a car show up without having a conversation. It's amazing what your network can do for you when you do exercise it properly. I had a gentleman who works with me in a different department call me up and say, look, I've got this family friend. He's coming out of school. He's interested in accounting. You mind having a conversation with him? Sure, no problem. Talk with him. Let me put you in touch with a cousin of mine who's actually doing, public accounting work. My cousin puts him in touch with a recruiter. The kid's got a job and, got an offer and is working in New York now. And there's 7 different intersections there, but exercising your network, I think, is an incredibly invaluable thing to do in building that network.
Variations on a theme. Excel, yes, it's very important, but I would also say that having a good grounding, as I said, in statistics and knowing how to use them or what they mean so that you can apply. These are things that you apply. Accounting, statistics, the wonderful world of Excel and other tools to crunch numbers is important, but understanding those numbers is even more important. It's not just the numbers, but what they mean or what they might mean. And then on the softer side, although I don't think this is all softer side, I'm going to tell you that active listening is one of the most important things that you can do. And I don't care what business or field you go into, but the ability to still your mind and to listen and really hear what someone has to say so that you can communicate it back to them or take what they're saying and then apply it to whatever you're doing is important. The art of writing, Charles talked about it a little bit, but I will tell you that the ability to write is really critically important. It will separate you from the crowd, whether it's a simple letter or whether it's an executive summary or a report, or being able to communicate your ideas in writing in a way that your audience will understand it. And last but certainly not least, I think to Charles's point again and the possibility of becoming socially isolated, the simple art of the thank you, saying please, thank you, following up, really paying attention, letting whoever you're working with, whether it's on a personal basis or a business basis, know you care, is going to make a difference.
Thanks. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys now. Natalie is going to be our microphone person. So if you have a question, raise your hand and she'll come over and then you can go ahead and ask our panel. So don't be shy. I know some of you guys have to have questions. No one's got questions. Oh, we got a question.
How many years did it take for each of you to get to your respective positions?
I guess I can start off here. Yeah. Sure. Thank you. It's 16 years, essentially. And you know, I started off in, in an organization where I got to see a lot of how a lot of other organizations function. As a bank examiner, essentially what you're doing is you're moving every couple of weeks to a new institution. You're seeing what works, what doesn't work, and then from there actually moved to PwC. You know, another one of the big fours. You know, similar to where Brandon is, and that's another organization where you get to cut your teeth by looking around and seeing what works and doesn't work, and that's one thing that I found incredibly valuable. So to the extent that you can find an opportunity that can show you the universe of possibilities, that could be a pretty valuable thing.
"15 years to be very competent and confident that I could take on pretty much any challenge and come up with good solutions." So you're always learning, you're always going to be learning, but it does take time and patience.
I don't think my answer is as relevant because I just started. So I've been here a year and a half, straight out of school. So that's pretty much it.
As it's sort of traditional that as a financial advisor, which is what we are, it usually takes about 5 years to sort of get your business established to where you're going to survive, where you're going to last. And then for me, it was probably 10 years until I felt that I was really, really an expert and really skillful at what I did. But also remember that I got into this when I was in my mid to late 30s. And those 8 prior years of working in politics and then starting a technology and politics business was really where where boy went to man. That's when I learned how to, I earned the skills of an adult to be able to go into my business and then become a financial professional.
I think I'm a little bit like Brandon as well, where I've been with the company for almost 4 years now. But I have changed roles, I want to say 3 times throughout my time, at Accenture. So, I mean, essentially, I'm technically kind of a beginner as well, I'd say, in comparison to some of the rest of us here.
So, Mr. Livingston, you mentioned the fact that your work-life balance is a little bit difficult at this point. Would you all say that as your success increases, that you happen to notice the same thing, that your work-life balance kind of dwindles as you climb the ladder?
I'll start with that. No, just the opposite. So, and it may be the nature of the business and the ability to define hours and boundaries. It's a boundaries issue. I actually have more time now than I did 5 or 10 years ago.
I think it's the opposite mostly as well where I work. So as you learn more, people care even less where you're at. They trust that you can get the work done. They trust that you could do it on vacation or at home. So that's a big benefit of even more independence. Also, though, you can get into some projects that are even more technically difficult. So that can suck more hours out of your day as well. So that's kind of the flip side of that.
I'd have to say, I think personally in my experience that work-life balance is more of something that you can just set the tone in the very beginning. That's how I got to go back to school. I mean, working for a very high visible project like Obamacare and had countless ridiculous hours, I was able to just go to my boss and say, hey, I'm going back to grad school. I have class at 6 p.m. Between 6 to 9, I'm unavailable. And that, led me through my time, when I got to pricing and I was interviewing for the position. That was just something that, I set in stone from the beginning. I said, listen, I go to school and I understand sometimes I need to pull in some extra hours, and I hope that's not going to be a problem. And I'll have sales teams that would, schedule conference calls at 6 p.m. and I'm like, I'm sorry, I have class. And they're totally fine with that. And I think it's just all about setting the tone. And just like JP, I get to work from home like 4 days a week if I really wanted to. But it's at the end of the day, it's if you get your job done, I think your work-life balance just gets easier and easier because you learn how to maintain your priorities and how to get things done in the time that you have.
My life's gotten easier. I kind of wanted it that way. I knew it would work out that way. But that's because I don't have employees reporting to me, nor do I have to report to a lot of people. I report to about, a little over 100 clients. And I can report to them, partly on their time schedule, but partly on mine. So I think the ability to sort of control the balance of your life, and at least one ingredient of this is how many people report to you, and how many people do you report to?
One thing that I would add is that as the responsibilities have increased, I've just had to really get more organized, which is for me is a challenge. Growing pains, call it. But it might mean, hey, I want to be home for dinner, but look, after I put the kids to bed, I'm back on the computer and working through some things. So that's kind of my answer, is trying to get more organized. To the extent that I want to, maintain this role, it's just what it calls for.
I like that question a lot, because the different natures of the different people's jobs pose different challenges with the balance, but also different ways of working around it. Some of the folks have a balance. They basically say more life, less work. And other folks, because of the nature of their jobs, say there's going to be a ton of work, but either through my own competence or my own organization, I can establish that I get to do it a little bit more on my time. And so that was a great question. It's definitely something for you guys to think about as you're navigating your way through your career, what fits best with what you want to do.
Do you think that flexibility and the ability to move to different positions and different businesses, or longevity, sticking with a certain thing, has helped you guys get to where you are more?
I think going around to different positions helped me get to where I am now, because I got to experience different positions and see what I liked and what I didn't like. And it all goes back to the power of networking and using your network to do so. I can tell you guys just a quick little story. So at Accenture, we have a day of service. And so it's a day we go and, do service projects. And so when I was on the healthcare.gov project, I was doing requirements for a website, and that's not something that I wanted to do for the rest of my time. And so at the service project, just in, getting to meet everyone else on my team, one of the people that was on my team was the chief financial officer of Accenture Federal. And, of course, I was really excited to meet her because I was trying to get into finance. And, just kept in contact with her. And then a few months down the line, I said, what the heck, I'm going to send her my resume. It was worth a shot. And I did. And she passed on my resume to the team that I'm on now. And here I am today. It's like you never know who you're going to meet when you're going to meet them. But if your company offers that, or if you can't, go out there and go after what you want. I mean, even when I was your age, I tried out different internships and different various roles in finance, just so I'm not stuck doing something that I really hated. And I think it really helps you. I mean, you can right now say, I want to go do valuations for companies, and you go do that, and you're like, absolutely not. It's not what I want to do the rest of my life. So I think going around trying different jobs will definitely help you figure out what you really want to do.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'm from Southern California, and I was given a chance with this political consultant to start this technology company. It took me all of 5 seconds to move to Austin, Texas, and then we moved the business out here to Virginia. So I didn't know anybody. It didn't make any difference. It was a good shot. In the position that I'm in now, though, once you take this on, you have got to stick with it. Failure was no option, and there's a high failure rate in this. But once you get stabled, then it's all about how does it get better, and that's sticking with it.
For me, I would say it's a little bit of both. So I had a coworker who actually just left the firm. He was there for 2 years. He knew exactly what to do, specialized in that at the firm. Very finance-focused work, passed all the CFA, Certified Financial Analyst, charters, 3 different exams, and he went to Wall Street after 2 years at Big Four. A lot of people in Big Four, though, don't know what they want to do, and they're not certain. So I think I feel more in that boat. So I like to do a bunch of different stuff and volunteer for a lot of different projects for when I do choose to exit. Hopefully my employer's not listening. That I have something that can relate to that industry or that job. And I think that's the best strategy for me.
There's an old saying that if you look at somebody's resume, you want to know if they've got 15 years of the same kind of experience or 15 years of experience. So it's hard to answer your question in a straight line, but I would say there are a couple of things to consider. Flexibility is good, but always make sure you're learning a new skill or you're putting yourself into a position where you can learn something new. You're not just doing the same thing over and over again, because it won't advance your career. Thinking about your career in 3 to 5 year increments is helpful. So whenever you're getting out of school, think about what you might want to do for the first 3 years and set yourself that goal, and then come back and revisit that. The world's going to change around you, so you need to be flexible to be open to new options and opportunities, and an opportunity that might present itself that you might never consider. But to JP's point, and I think for those of us who've been in a finance field for a while, having the patience to get the longevity so that it does become easier and you do build, I don't want to call it seniority, but expertise is the word that I want to use, is going to be important. So you want to think about what expertise do you want to develop and still have it be applicable as the world changes around you.
I feel like in determining what it is that you want to do with your life professionally, for me, it seems like a process of elimination, right? So you give something a shot and you look around and maybe you decide it's not for you and you try something else. That's why, again, I would point to, Big Four consulting work as kind of, an ideal situation where, again, you get to, it's a huge universe. You get to travel around and meet a lot of different people and see a lot of different organizations, and there are a lot of disciplines within finance and accounting that you have exposure to in those. So I think that's a great way to go. One thing that you all right or wrong, unfortunately have to battle against is this millennial stereotype that you're all entitled and you think you know everything, right? So the ability to kind of, as Judy said, listen, show humility, and stick with an opportunity, and show, look, I'm not who you think I am, based on the millennial profile. That's something else that'll really set you apart. But to answer your question more directly, I mean, I think being strategic with your moves, knowing when it's time to leave and jump is important. Candidly, I had a situation where I was in a place too long. I probably stayed in one of my roles for probably about a year longer than I needed to, and I wish I'd made the move and had the courage to make the move sooner. So I do think it's important to do that. But if you're showing a shotgun resume where every 6 months or 9 months you're jumping from one place to another for 3 or 4 jobs, it's going to tell a story. So I think you'll know.
I see people leaving, but I don't see any hands up. So I'll throw out a question while you guys are thinking of the next one. What do you guys describe like a colleague that you work with and some of the qualities that they have that you would like about that colleague, and some of the qualities that a colleague has that you do not like working with that colleague? And I guess let's start with, well, I guess, Brandon, we can start with you, and then we'll rotate this way this time.
This would have to really do with leadership. So I have a coworker who only was a year more experienced than me, but he was incredibly intelligent. This is the one that went to Wall Street, and he really did mentor me. And it's kind of odd to have someone with only a year more experience mentoring you, but he was that knowledgeable, and he did it for a lot of people in the firm, and just very helpful, always there, always willing to do work, always willing to stay late. And so that's a quality I really think is great. It's just that kind of friendship inside the office. And another coworker is one that's more senior level, and this is one of those people that are extremely intelligent, but have not had any training and is not quite fit to lead, but is in kind of a leadership position and really trying too hard to manage people, micromanagement, being too difficult, and it really alienates that person from a lot of the people in the office. And how you resolve that is just listening to more senior people than that person, and learning more about how to work with your subordinates. So those are two people in the office that a lot of people are familiar with. They're very drastically different, both very intelligent, but both are succeeding in one succeeding, I think, a lot more than the other.
Judy.
Well, I'm in the, I think, enviable position of not having per se colleagues. I do have employees, but I'll speak to the profession, to the business. So one of the wonderful things about the financial planning profession, wealth management profession, is the willingness to share ideas and to help out. I'm in 3 different study groups, different kinds, where we try to do best practices, best ideas. If somebody has run into a situation and is looking for a resource, reach out and find out who the resource is. We're very careful about maintaining confidentiality of our clients and not necessarily sharing the details, but we're willing to help out a colleague in that way. And I think that's a very, very special aspect of the business. What do I not like? I'm going to disagree very politely with JP, which is I think it's important to ask to be a client, but not to necessarily sell. So we are all selling ourselves. Each of you is going to be selling yourself, whether it's in a personal relationship, in a professional relationship. You always want to put your best foot forward, but I think it's important not to be overwhelming. I don't have a better way to put it. This way.
I'll talk a little bit about the man that I work for and the CEO of Eagle Bank, who, is the epitome of kind of setting a tone at the top, a positive tone at the top. This is a guy my favorite story about the guy. He about three and a half years ago or so, we were due to go down to an investor conference in Florida. My wife was 4 weeks away from delivering my second child, and there was a big snowstorm coming in, and my boss, Ron, calls me up and says, look, I know you're concerned about this situation. I'm going to make the executive decision for you. You're not going. And I want to be a good soldier and go. And he, made the decision for me. My wife went into labor that weekend, and who knows what the stress of me being away would have done. But that, conscientiousness and kindness endeared me to him, endlessly. And so I think that's a virtue that I think is something I'll never forget, and I find incredibly valuable in somebody who you're working for. I'll also echo kind of somewhat what Brandon said in terms of I've got a gentleman who works for me who always lies to me and tells me he knows how to do everything, which I love because he does go figure it out. He's that good. So he every time he goes and he'll figure it out, and he'll come back to me and he'll tell me, look, I did my best. I didn't fully understand X, Y, or Z, but here's my interpretation of what's going on, and I think that's fantastic. Contrast of that, I've worked with folks who will brush it off and say, that's not me. That's not in my job description, and I find that just really disappointing, and it's very difficult to work with folks like that. You want that can-do spirit. So,
the people that I admire in the office are the ones that show up at the same time every morning, and they're diligent and they do their job methodically. A characteristic I don't particularly have, and they're good at it. They're very successful. There's different ways of being successful. I wish I had more of that. Fortunately, I'm not around people that I don't like. I just ignore them. I just don't let them get in my day. It's discouraging when people act like they know more than they do, and if they don't follow through, that's maddening. But you just learn to avoid people like that.
Well, to avoid redundancy to somewhat my other colleagues here have talked about some of the qualities that I've enjoyed working with some of the leaders that I've had is just if they find out that you're unhappy in your job, they find a way to make you happy, even if that means you having to leave their team and finding you the right position for you. There are people out there that will do that for you, because at the end of the day, it's all about maximizing what you're really good at, doing something that you really enjoy doing, as opposed to you just being stuck in a job that that you got hired to do, but you really are hating it. And that is a quality that I really admired in a lot of the leaders that I've worked with. Qualities that I don't like is there's a manager that I worked with before who just liked to do everything by himself and just does not delegate. And me being the person that gets bored very easily, I just found myself being his little secretary, like, go get me this, go get me that, or find this for me, or summarize this email for me. And I just had it. And so it was either he left or I left, and I ended up leaving because, I look to my managers as, my leaders, my mentors, somebody that's going to help encourage me and push me to do better. And this just was not the type of person that I wanted to work under. And so I found myself looking for just a different position within the firm.
I have a question. Given the finance industry and it's high energy, fast paced, and you can meet so many different people from every walks of life, what is your best strategy for dealing with difficult people in the workplace and all the while still trying to get your work done?
And I'll start. It's easy, but it's just a function of my position. I just avoid them. I don't let them get in my life. I don't have to, so I don't.
Well, me in comparison, working with sales teams, I cannot avoid them. So when I'm working on proposals, we have, some of the sales teams that it's all about selling. It's all about getting their price to win, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to get there. Me on the pricing side, I have to be, the policeman, and say, no, we cannot do that. These are the rules we have to follow. And some of them don't like it, and some of them do. It's fine, they'll follow, but it's really just about, being the bigger person and you following the rules. And, sometimes you may have to pull in a manager or two to really help reiterate your point. But at the end of the day, I think it's all about just doing the right thing and just figuring out how to work with them by just keeping an open mind. I mean, at the end of the day, you both work for the same company and you're both trying to win a proposal in my case. So you just have to find a way to work with them.
I'll give a little different spin to this. Mine would be more, I like a lot of people in my office, but if you're going to run into a conflict, I find that email is the number one place you're going to run into a conflict. As you probably know, it's tough to interpret what they mean by it. And I actually had this problem literally just yesterday. I was supposed to go to a meeting. Very kindly said I was busy. I think my time would be better spent somewhere else. And I got this, what appeared to me a very retaliation in an email from a very senior person to me. And I honestly had no idea how to respond. Sat there for probably about 30 minutes and kept toning back my response to be nicer and nicer and nicer until I sent such a nice text, it probably offended them. And then I was called into another superior's office because that person contacted them, and ultimately I don't know how it's going to develop. But in that situation, I think big just involving emails, don't respond right away because your emotions are there and you got to get rid of those emotions first before you respond. It will always hurt you in the long run to respond immediately with emotion. Wait till you can send just a very polite response and then figure out what they really meant or talk to them in person.
I'm like JP. I'm in the enviable position at this point of not having to deal with people who are difficult for the most part or who I don't like. That doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. It just means that I have a greater range of choices than many people have. But to Brandon's point, I think that we all find ourselves in situations where there's conflict, and being the better person is the best way to do it, and just make sure that you walk away and that there's mutual respect. That's probably the best thing. But if you just don't engage, do what you can and just exit.
I think tailoring your response depending on the situation. Obviously, in the case of a spat over email or something like that, pick up the phone, have a conversation with the person. I think you'd be amazing how much can be cleared up when there's just a miscommunication matter. Finding common ground with people who you may have a different perspective than is also helpful. Okay, we clearly disagree on X, Y, and Z, but look, here's where we're together on A, B, and C. So let's figure out how to bridge the gap. And then, sometimes you do need an arbiter. Sometimes you have to call in somebody more senior to say, look, we've got this issue. Can you help us, determine which side of the fence we need to fall out on?
So we're at about 11:30 now, so I think we're going to wrap up the questions. And so we'll do the kind of the meet and greet. So students, you guys are, actually, I did have one more thing. So at the end of the day, you're going to go home, you're going to talk to your friends, you're going to say, what was the panel all about? You'll tell them there was a good spread. But I want to give all the panelists a chance for kind of the one takeaway. You could be restating something you already said, but when these guys are telling their friends, what went on at the panel, what would the one thing you'd want them to remember from you? So we'll just start with Charles and go work our way down.
Sure. Exercise your network. I think that's my one takeaway. Your parents' friends, your friends' parents, everybody knows somebody, and it is somewhat true what they say sometimes that it is kind of who you know or who you've encountered that sometimes gets you that first foot in the door, and then you just obviously have to perform. But that's what I would say. Also, while I've got the microphone, I just want to say that I appreciate you all being here, taking an interest in your own careers. I think this shows an incredible amount of character, even coming in here and going above and beyond to a non-mandatory event and taking control of your own careers. And also want to say thank you to George Mason, and Eagle Bank appreciates our relationship with you all. It's a really important one. I think we've got a flurry of interns every year from this school, and again, really appreciate having the opportunity to come in and have a conversation with you all.
Actually, two things. One is to echo Charles's comments in a slightly different way, that everybody in this room is in the relationship business. So think about what your relationships are now and how you can build those and foster them and grow them, because that's the rest of your life, whether it's business or personal in nature. If you want to be in finance, you all want to be in business, I hope, in some way, is to think about what you love to do, or what you enjoy doing now, and then think about how many different options there are and start to explore them. Don't wait until you're ready to go recruit for that, but really start to do some informational interviewing and to ask questions, whether you're asking your professors, whether you're asking professionals like ourselves, but just be curious about what's out there, because you never know what's going to strike you.
My advice would be for a question that wasn't asked, and it's number one on this sheet. It's what's a Mason degree worth? I think a lot of you probably in this room ask yourself that a lot, especially as you start looking for jobs, is how is Mason valued? There's other universities that are going to be a lot more prestigious. And when you start searching, you might be a little insecure that George Mason isn't as well represented or well respected. And I would say that's very wrong. One thing that Mason has, and it's said a lot of times, it's very cliche, is a lot of the people here have work experience while going to school. And when I started at 16, worked at the same place, and was a store manager of a retailer by my senior year here at George Mason while double majoring. That was extremely difficult. But a lot of friends and family told me that wasn't valued as much as a 4.0. So when I started looking for jobs, I was really thinking that I should have had that 4.0. I shouldn't have done the job. I shouldn't have used the money, and I was using the money to pay down a school debt. And once I started interviewing with enough different firms, I found that was absolutely wrong, and that firms actually heavily valued that. I was going into interviews where they would not ask me a single question other than about my work experience. How many people did you manage? Who'd you work with? What'd you learn here? They loved it. And I got job offers that I didn't think I would get because of that. So my piece of advice would be confident, know how to sell yourself, know your story, and when you have that resume, be able to answer every question that says, why did you do that? Why did you not do this? Why did you not focus as much on school? Or if you made bad mistakes, be able to say, yeah, that was a really bad decision, but this is what I learned from it. And I think that would be a lot more respected by a good hiring manager than perfect GPA and very little experience.
The finance industry is very broad. There's four of us up here today, but there's a lot. We cover a certain range of things, but there's a lot to finance. There's the analytical side. Some people enjoy being analytical. Other people enjoy managing a team in a corporate environment. Other people like the one-on-one pleasures of working with people as clients and so forth. I've never had a job where I responded to an ad. It just never happened that way. You need to figure out what it is that you want to do and kind of the direction, the path that you want to take, and then start pursuing, whether you know these people or not, contact them and ask them if you can find out about their profession and how this business works and so forth. You want to explore yourself and find the right position, the right thing for you to do, as opposed to responding to something that might be the right thing to do. That does work.
I think in this world of digital, people don't think about it as much that way. But find out what would make you happy, and then start to explore this as an information gathering exercise. And what you will wind up doing is meeting a lot of people, and you'll eventually be offered a position if you're sincerely pursuing it from an information gathering point of view.
And I know I've mentioned this before, but you're in a position where you can try out different internships and try out different roles, and that's really important to help you figure out what you want. And ultimately, not to echo what everyone else said here, one thing that I did when I was your age, going to networking events, is I created my own little business card. As weird as it sounds, it had my name, my major, and my email, and a link to my LinkedIn. And every time I went to a networking event and I asked for someone's card, I gave them mine. And they're like, oh, you have a card? And that's all it had, is really my resume walking around in a card. And it just sets you apart. Like when I went to interviews and so on, and we exchanged cards, they remembered me somehow. It was just that one little thing that, just set me apart from other people. And you can go to Vistaprint and get like 100 for free and pay for shipping. And there you go. There goes the rest of your networking events for the rest of the time that you have here. So that's it.
Great, thanks. So we're pretty much done now. I want to thank the panel. I think you guys were fantastic. A lot of great things were said. A lot of really useful things were said. Thank Eagle Bank for sponsoring this. And so I encourage the students to come up and network and mingle and ask your questions. And have a nice day. Thank you. Oh, it worked out perfect. Yeah.